The chamber echoed with the murmurs of the galaxy's most ancient voices. Representatives from 100 civilizations, scaled, furred, crystalline, or encased in exosuits, filled the grand hall of the Galactic Council. Suspended in low orbit above a neutral world, the chamber served as the supposed center of peace and order across 1,000 systems. For centuries, its decisions had shaped trade routes, resolved conflicts, and drawn the line between civilization and chaos. At the center of this ordered cosmos sat humanity, silent and new. They were recent arrivals, inducted only a decade prior after finally demonstrating the minimum threshold of warp stability and post-scarcity equilibrium. Some council members had objected to their inclusion. Too young, too emotional, too violent. But the numbers didn't lie. Humans had expanded faster than any species in recorded memory. Colonies bloomed in dead systems. Terraforming rates exceeded expectations. Their AI interfaces, strange and semi-conscious, worked with frightening precision. And so the vote passed, narrowly. Humanity was granted a seat, though few took them seriously. The Scorch delegate, whose people once fought interstellar wars over orbital grazing rights, scoffed as the human envoy stepped into the chamber. "Children," he muttered to his neighbor. "Infant predators." Others chuckled, silently or otherwise. The room dimmed. A drone hovered forward and projected the crimson crest of the Council's emergency insignia. An emergency session had been called at humanity's request. Many expected it to be another protest about mining rights near Andros Delta, or their complaint over piracy near the Rowlon corridor. The usual diplomatic noise. Then the chamber grew quiet as the recording played. No words. No explanations. Just images. A human world. Not Earth, but one of their larger colonies, Brizendel. Oceans boiled in the wake of plasma fire. Skyscrapers melted, twisted metal reaching skyward like fingers from the grave. People screamed, but their voices were erased by silence. The footage wasn't dramatic. It was clinical. An orbital station's feed, time-stamped. 74 million dead. 3 continents burned. The transmission ended. Delegates fidgeted. Some folded their limbs. Others turned to advisors. The Chancellor requested clarification. The human envoy didn't move. A soft chime indicated the arrival of Earth's president via live holographic relay. The image was not grandiose. No pomp, no flag. Just a woman in a black suit, standing behind a gray podium. Her voice was calm. "You attacked our home?" The chamber froze. Not in confusion. In shock. No one expected an accusation. No one expected conviction. "You may claim deniability," she said. "You may point to pirate fleets and rogue factions. But we know who supplied the weapons. We traced the energy signatures. We decrypted the command protocols. We confirmed, beyond any reasonable doubt, that members of this council enabled the attack." No delegate interrupted. "For 10 years we have abided by your rules. We have accepted your guidance. We assumed you governed by reason. Today, we were reminded of your fear." The Chancellor finally spoke, voice measured. "President Ryland, we—" She raised a hand. "Do not interrupt." Even the Chancellor paused. Ryland's tone never rose. There was no performative anger, no gesturing. Just quiet authority. "Your species look upon us as newcomers. As upstarts. You warn us of the dangers of expansion. You claim we lack the patience of the ancients. And yet when we build you sabotage. When we negotiate you misdirect. When we bleed you call it unfortunate." She leaned slightly forward. "Do not mistake youth for weakness. Do not confuse restraint with ignorance." A murmur built in the rear of the chamber. The delegate from Zarn attempted to protest, but their microphone was cut. The chamber operator, a neutral AI, followed the rules of an emergency declaration. Only the petitioner could speak. "We rebuilt after every flood, every fire, every war. We carry our scars forward. Not to forget, but to remember. And we remember everything." Another image played. Not of the colony. Of Earth. Hiroshima. Sarajevo, Aleppo, New York, Kharkiv, Mogadishu, Chernobyl. A series of catastrophes, self-inflicted and endured. Then, slowly, images of peace, bridges rebuilt, cities lit again, fields harvested, children walking to school. Do you see us now? Ryland asked. Do you understand what you've awakened? The silence was total. Ryland folded her hands. We came here hoping to be part of something greater. To learn. To listen. We were foolish. There is no order here. Only hierarchy maintained through fear. Her eyes narrowed. Fear is a language we speak fluently. She paused for one long moment. We will not retaliate blindly. We will not strike civilians. We will not destroy for revenge. Relief flickered in a few expressions. But we will dismantle every regime that harbored, funded, or authorized this attack. We will expose every lie, decrypt every channel, and pierce every veil. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Today, the Terran Accord exits all Council treaties. We dissolve all subservient obligations. We claim autonomy in defense of our species. One final sentence followed. Unadorned. Inevitable. And to those who gave the order, run. The transmission ended. The silence that followed was not diplomatic. It was fear. You thought we wouldn't trace it. You believed we'd stumble in the dark, chasing shadows and pointing fingers. But we are not blind, and we are not slow. Within 36 hours, we knew the type of plasma used. 42 hours later, we had the engine signatures from the attack fleet. And before your diplomats prepared your denials, our analysts had already decrypted your internal routing protocols. You didn't hide it well. You never thought you had to. This wasn't piracy. Pirates do not launch coordinated planetary bombardments. They do not suppress orbital defenses with Council-grade ECM. They do not issue falsified distress beacons to lure civilian responders into kill zones. Pirates don't leave your encryption fingerprints on command relays. We know who gave the order. Not by name yet. But we will find them. Your proxies, paid mercenaries, discarded dissidents, will not shield you. You fed them weapons, maps, codes. You sent them to deliver a message. You assumed we would hesitate, plead, collapse under the weight of tragedy. That we would sit in our grief, too broken to act. You've mistaken us for your kind. When our skies burned, we didn't scatter. We organized. When our cities fell, our people didn't run. They dug. They pulled each other from rubble. They carried the injured through fire. When communications failed, our civilians re-established networks using museums, satellites, and private relay drones. Every Terran child knew who to call, where to go, what to do. You wanted chaos. You created unity. You struck civilians. You targeted hospitals. You erased orbiting life science platforms. You think war is about power. We know it is about will. Every surviving citizen on Brezendel uploaded their final messages to a shared quantum burst. No encryption. Just truth. Their last words are now archived in 4,000 languages. Their voices play in city centers across Earth and the colonies. You wanted to extinguish us. Instead, you've immortalized them. You made the first move. We make the last. We will not beg this council for justice. Justice is not a concept respected here. If it were, those who slaughtered the Renari would have stood trial. If it were, the artificial plagues of Sector 7 wouldn't have been buried under diplomatic silence. Your laws do not bind us anymore. We don't need your approval to survive. You dressed this hall in symbols of peace. You built it on a history of conquests and silent exterminations. You offer negotiation only after dominance. That is not peace. It is submission. We will not participate. We are no longer petitioners. Today, I speak not as your equal. I speak as the voice of a species you can no longer control. The Terran Accord is dissolved. All trade, defense, and information-sharing compacts are terminated. Our consulates are vacated. Our satellites will no longer broadcast council transmissions. your flags are removed from our stations. Any vessels approaching Terran space will be scanned, identified, and tracked. Any unauthorized intrusion will be responded to without delay or warning. We do not seek expansion. We do not require conquest. But understand this clearly: there is no sanctuary for those who assisted in this act. No amnesty for those who sheltered the perpetrators. We are coming. And we will not come as you do, with ceremony and warnings. We will strike only once. With precision. Without debate. And then we will vanish before your sensors recalibrate. Do not confuse mercy with inaction. We gave you 10 years of diplomacy. 10 years of contribution. 10 years of restraint. You used that time to plan a massacre. You weaponized our openness. You punished our trust. That was your final miscalculation. You think of us as fragile because our bodies break. Because we cry for the dead. Because we mourn. But that's why we're dangerous. You fear loss. We transform it. Every Terran born now carries the memory of Brazendel. Every child will learn its coordinates, its story, its fall. It will not become a cautionary tale. It will become a vow. We are not requesting intervention. We are not submitting evidence for deliberation. We are declaring intent. Our fleets are not ceremonial. Our weapons are not deterrents. Every system we possess is now repurposed for mobilization. Every AI core reoriented to logistics and warfare. You've never seen a unified humanity. You will now. We're not coming to punish. We're coming to ensure it never happens again. And if that means dismantling your alliances, exposing your secrets, and overturning your seats, so be it. This is not escalation. This is a reply. To those who did not conspire, step aside. To those who believe in accountability, prove it. To those who still think us incapable, keep watching. We don't need to conquer. We only need to reach you. And we will. The moment the Council transmission ended, every Terran command protocol transitioned to wartime state. Civilian infrastructure redirected to logistics. Manufacturing plants shifted from commerce to defense production. Orbital dry docks received classified blueprints queued for emergency execution. Within hours, Earth's fragmented military branches unified under a single protocol, Directive Vengeance. There was no protest. No debate. No hesitation. Reservists reported in from deep space mining colonies and Martian subsurface zones. AI clusters rerouted processing power to predictive modeling for retaliation paths. Old war games, once considered paranoid relics, became baselines. Even black site technologies, long buried due to ethical concerns, were reactivated under direct authorization from the Accord's dissolution clause. First to launch were unmanned recon units. Cloaked in signal-dampening mesh and powered by dark energy siphons, they entered Council systems before their diplomats finished drafting official condemnations. No warnings were issued. No demands sent. Only observation. Terran naval doctrine, once dismissed as archaic, proved incomprehensible to alien analysts. Their fleets expected symmetry, broadcasting intentions and maintaining rigid formations. Ours operated under adaptive chaos. No two squadrons looked the same. Some were converted mining freighters bristling with particle drills. Others were atmospheric jump carriers rigged with magneto-shielding to survive gravity's slingshot maneuvers. Each hull served two purposes: survive and strike. When the first Council-aligned outpost went dark, no distress signals were captured. 3 defense rings, vaporized in 6 synchronized pulses. Data suggested breach through a lunar blind spot exploited from planetary archives. How that information was acquired remained unanswered. But we knew. Humanity didn't invent war. We perfected how to respond to it without repeating our old mistakes. Our strikes were not scorched earth. They were surgical, targeted, clean. Only military installations. Only confirmed participants in the attack. Not a single civilian settlement touched. This precision did more damage than any indiscriminate bombardment. Council species were used to fear through force, not fear through certainty. Their commanders could not predict us. Their algorithms failed. Their propaganda turned ineffective. They had underestimated our learning curve, forgetting that our greatest strength was never in muscle but in adaptability. On Earth, every child learned history with pain attached. Every century of conflict analyzed, every failure archived, every abuse of power studied. Our retaliation didn't mirror their offense. It eclipsed it through strategy, not brutality. Saboteurs disabled orbital stations before a single shot was fired. Languages were decoded before contact was made. By the time a Council fleet assembled in defense, it found its own communication lines rerouted, broadcasting Terran transmissions on loop. We never repeated tactics. We struck once. Then vanished. Different fleet, different method, different target. Total confusion. For the first time in recorded interstellar conflict, AI war planners across 3 Council species declared predictive failure. Not due to lack of data, but because humanity refused to follow any recognizable doctrine. They mistook restraint for lack of capability. We didn't respond because we weren't ready. We responded because we waited. We wanted proof. Once that was confirmed, we executed everything we had prepared silently across 10 years of Council hypocrisy. Technological disparity wasn't in our favor, on paper. But their systems were predictable, standardized, shared across member nations. Our systems were ugly, improvised, decentralized. Our engineers didn't work for elegance. They worked for speed, adaptability, and effect. One Terran cruiser, the Nemesis Run, disabled an entire carrier fleet using a magnetic pulse generated from a collapsing neutron emulator. Technology considered unstable and illegal by Council consensus. We didn't ask for permission. We used what worked. This unpredictability paralyzed them. Internal fractures appeared among our enemies. Accusations of betrayal spread. Some species accused others of dragging them into a human war. Treaties strained. Borders hardened. One by one, non-aligned systems declared neutrality, refusing docking access to Council vessels. Terran influence expanded without a single declaration of conquest. Our retaliation wasn't conquest. It was consequence. Messages intercepted across enemy relays no longer discussed Terran aggression. They spoke of containment and damage limitation. For the first time, human deployment was treated not as political theater, but as existential threat. Yet we never issued ultimatums. No speeches followed each strike. We didn't explain. We didn't justify. We simply acted. Because the point had already been made. Earth wasn't just defending itself. It was demonstrating capacity. One Council admiral, in an encrypted transmission before resigning, wrote, "We told ourselves they were volatile, short-lived, too emotional to manage galactic order. But we were wrong. They aren't volatile. They're disciplined. And they are furious." He understood what most still refused to admit. Humanity didn't rise through dominance. It rose through memory. And memory had been activated. They began to whisper our name in private chambers, no longer with contempt, but with apprehension. The same delegates who laughed behind closed doors now paused before mentioning Earth aloud. Council members initiated emergency security audits, convinced they had leaks. They didn't understand yet that we never breached their systems. We listened to the parts they thought were silent. The Terran response was not chaos. It was cold, precise, and beyond their comprehension. They expected fire. They received silence before collapse. A high-priority weapons depot in the Varnax belt lost control of its temperature regulators. Within minutes, its entire ammunition cache imploded. No breach, no sign of enemy craft. Internal diagnostics traced the override to a firmware update installed 5 years prior, delivered through a now-defunct civilian mapping service purchased quietly by a Terran shell company. We had waited. Not because we lacked options, but because patience had always been misinterpreted as naivety. In less than 3 weeks, 5 critical military networks across 3 allied species ceased function entirely. Artificial intelligence cores locked out their creators. control systems were rerouted through firewalls built with Terran logic frameworks embedded during peaceful trade exchanges. Our weapon was not just steel. It was subtlety. Council propaganda shifted tactics. They branded us extremists, demanded sympathy for unprovoked escalation. The tactic collapsed within days. Civilian networks across neutral systems began broadcasting intercepted Council documents, evidence of their silent complicity in the Brezendal attack, proof that multiple members voted to suppress the truth in closed committee. None of this was leaked by diplomats. It was orchestrated by Terran civilians. Coders, information miners, translators, average people, acting in concert without command. Decentralized retaliation became cultural. It wasn't war by nation. It was vengeance by memory. One alien journalist, granted asylum after defecting, wrote, "We believed Earth's power came from its weapons. We were wrong. It comes from its people. Their capacity for pain is only matched by their unity under it." Council allies faltered. Smaller species that had provided logistical support began refusing resource shipments. Former collaborators now demanded evidence of their innocence. Internal purges began. Fragile alliances buckled under the weight of fear. Yet, throughout this, humanity didn't claim territory. No worlds were annexed. No governments overthrown. Our fleet struck, vanished, then observed. Each act a scalpel, not a sword. This lack of conquest confused the Council further. They understood empires. They did not understand restraint fused with capability. When we struck their defense grids, we didn't broadcast demands. We left behind recorded voices of Brezendal's final survivors, their coordinates burned into data cores as reminders. They listened, because they had no choice. An alien commander attempted retaliation. His fleet engaged a Terran unit at the edge of an unclaimed system. Within minutes, his vessels were isolated. His navigation AI ceased to recognize star maps. His reactors began countdown procedures to failure. No shots were fired. The fleet surrendered itself to Terran forces rather than continue under systems they could no longer understand. Terran strategy had shifted the rules of warfare from physical to psychological. Targets were chosen not for tactical value, but for symbolic weight. Every strike dismantled trust between Council members. Their military doctrine relied on shared security protocols. Ours had none. They saw this as weakness. It became our greatest strength. Rumors spread of human agents embedded in their ranks. They searched endlessly for spies. None were found. Because there were none. Humanity didn't infiltrate. We analyzed. We listened. And we remembered. Council-controlled trade hubs reported sudden blackouts during peak cycles. Power rerouted. Vaults emptied. No evidence of sabotage, just entire shipments reappearing days later in Terran refugee centers. We struck at logistics, not lives. But the effect was the same: destabilization. As panic grew, some factions approached Earth requesting neutrality pacts. Not to challenge us, but to avoid being noticed. Even species uninvolved with the original attack began to redact their past statements about humanity. Public declarations of respect appeared. Statues were erected in frontier systems to honor Terran solidarity. We didn't ask for any of it. One Council scholar observed, "The Terrans never needed our validation. They needed only one excuse. And now, we exist in a galaxy where that excuse has consequences." Their fear was not of our arsenal. It was of our silence. Because we never threatened. We reminded. They gathered again, not by command, but by necessity. The Council chambers, once a theater of authority, now held only unease. For weeks, the most powerful species had watched their influence fracture without a single official declaration from Earth. No conquest, no claim, no manifesto. Just consequences. Delegates spoke cautiously, avoiding absolutes. Proposals to sanction Earth were quietly withdrawn. Motions condemning their actions died in silence. A shared realization had emerged: opposition now carried cost. Silence had become survival. Then came the message. No demands. No ultimatum. An invitation. Terran diplomats arrived without procession. No guards, no ceremony, no symbolic display. Just presence. And that presence shifted the chamber's atmosphere more than any fleet ever could. The same president who once stood alone in grief now returned with no need for raised voice or reminder. The chamber listened before she spoke. Her words were direct. Order based on fear collapses under pressure. We've demonstrated that. There was no pride in her tone. No victory claimed. Just fact. The type of fact that reshapes institutions. She continued. We do not seek elevation. We seek accountability. What we endured will not be normalized. What we've lost will not be framed as a price of progress. Every delegate knew this was not a request. She outlined a proposal. Not for dominance, but for structural reform. Council positions would no longer be permanent. Oversight would be civilian. Member compliance monitored independently. Emergency actions subject to review from neutral third parties, including Terran observers. No species, regardless of age or contribution, would remain beyond scrutiny. There were no objections. None dared. The chamber shifted. A reordering began, not by force, but by influence born from clarity. The species once mocked for its volatility now defined stability. The ones labeled unpredictable had proven the most consistent. Allies, once distant, stepped forward. Neutral factions offered access, knowledge, and joined initiatives without precondition. Civilizations previously divided by suspicion now found common ground through Terran mediation. Because Earth, for all its retaliation, never crossed a line it couldn't justify. That consistency became its authority. In the aftermath, Earth declined territorial offers, refused tribute, demanded no reparations. Instead, they created archives. Brizendo's loss documented fully, made mandatory reading across aligned systems. Not as an act of guilt, but of remembrance. Not to shame, but to anchor. A new protocol emerged, one founded not on deterrence, but on consequence. The idea that peace required more than compliance. It required memory. Council operations changed. Closed-door votes became public records. Trade routes were redesigned with equitable distribution in mind. Communication protocols diversified beyond dominant networks. These weren't gifts. They were conditions for continued trust. And behind every signature, every alliance, every line of shared code, was the understanding that Earth watched. Not as a tyrant. Not as a conqueror. As proof. Proof that any civilization, pushed far enough, could abandon diplomacy and still hold to principle. Proof that measured fury did more to reorder power than brute force ever had. Terran influence didn't expand. It stabilized. Not through dominance, but through precedent. Children on distant worlds now spoke Earth languages alongside their own. Not out of conquest, but out of recognition. University exchanges doubled. AI frameworks once dismissed as primitive became industry standards. Human literature, once ignored, now sat translated in alien libraries, testaments to a species that endured itself before enduring others. The Council, once built to restrain chaos, now owed its continuity to the ones who had emerged from it. The President's final address wasn't one of triumph. It was a warning. Peace is not inherited. It's maintained. Not by tradition, but by memory. Her eyes passed over every delegate. Never again will silence be our answer. Never again will diplomacy be mistaken for submission. And never again will the destruction of one system be dismissed as unfortunate. Then she left. Not to applause. To silence. The same kind of silence the Council had once offered her people. Only now, it meant something different. It meant respect.